My name is Mackenzie Reynolds, and at 32, I've built a successful marketing career in New York City, far from my family's manufacturing business back home. 5 years ago, I watched my father hand over the company I'd spent my whole life preparing to lead to my sister Samantha instead. I made peace with it, or so I thought. Then last Tuesday, my phone rang at midnight. Dad's voice cracked as he delivered the news. Sam lost Atlas Manufacturing. That's $8 million, Mackenzie. 40% of our business gone overnight. We're not going to survive this. Before I dive into what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever had family drama shake your world to its core. Reynolds Manufacturing wasn't just a business. It was the backdrop of my childhood. Founded by my father Richard in our small town of Oak Ridge, Pennsylvania, it began as a tiny machine shop in our garage when I was just 3 years old. I grew up watching Dad transform it from a one-man operation into a respected manufacturer of precision parts for industrial equipment, eventually employing over 60 people in our community. Some of my earliest memories involve sitting on Dad's shoulders during facility tours, the familiar smell of metal and machine oil that somehow felt like home. By age 10, I was spending weekends at the shop, fascinated by the massive machines that could cut metal with microscopic precision. Dad would patiently explain every process, beaming with pride when I asked thoughtful questions. "You've got a mind for this business, Mackenzie," he'd say, ruffling my hair. Samantha, 3 years my senior, showed little interest in those days. While I was learning about supply chains and profit margins, she was focused on her social life and artistic pursuits. She'd roll her eyes when Dad talked business at dinner, making it clear she had other aspirations. "I'll never understand why you want to spend your life in that dirty old factory," she'd tell me, genuinely puzzled by my enthusiasm. Our mother Diana, who managed the company's finances until her passing when I was 21, always said we were perfectly balanced as sisters. "Samantha brings beauty into the world, and Mackenzie builds things that last," she'd say. After Mom died from breast cancer, Dad leaned on me even more for support with the business. I stepped up while finishing my business degree, learning every aspect of operations during school breaks. I shaped my entire education around eventually taking over Reynolds Manufacturing. I majored in business administration with a concentration in operations management, took extra courses in metallurgy and engineering principles, and even wrote my senior thesis on innovation in small manufacturing businesses, using our family company as my case study. When I graduated, I began working full-time at Reynolds, starting on the shop floor to learn production before moving into management. For 4 years, I worked alongside Dad, absorbing everything I could. We discussed succession planning openly, or so I thought. I developed relationships with our key clients, including Thomas Aldridge at Atlas Manufacturing, our largest account. I implemented a new inventory management system that increased efficiency by 23%. I was fully invested in the company's future because I believed it would one day be mine. Then came that Sunday dinner 5 years ago. We gathered at Dad's house like we did most weekends, nothing seemingly out of the ordinary. I'd brought a folder of ideas for expanding our client base in the aerospace sector. But before I could mention it, Dad cleared his throat and announced he had something important to share. "I've made a decision about the future of Reynolds Manufacturing," he said, reaching for Samantha's hand. "Sam will be taking over as CEO when I step back next month." The dining room went silent. I stared at my sister, who wore an expression somewhere between triumphant and nervous. She'd been divorced from her husband Derek for less than a year, had never shown any interest in the business, and had been working in art gallery management until recently. "But I don't understand," I finally managed to say, my voice small. "Sam doesn't know the business. I've been preparing for this my whole life." Dad looked uncomfortable but determined. "Sam needs this opportunity, Mackenzie. After her divorce, she needs stability and purpose. And she's been taking business courses online. She's the oldest, and I think this is the right decision for our family." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The betrayal cut deep, not just Dad's decision, but Sam's sudden interest in what had always been my passion. Later that night, When I confronted her privately, her response only worsened the wound. "Look, I know you're upset," she said, "but I'm older and I've been through a lot lately. Dad thinks I'm right for this, and honestly, I need something stable after everything with Derek. You're young, you can build something else." Within 2 weeks, I'd accepted a position at a marketing firm in New York City, focusing on manufacturing clients where my industry knowledge would be valuable. I packed my apartment, said stiff goodbyes to my father and sister, and left the town where I'd expected to spend my life, building our family legacy. The following years were marked by strained family interactions. I came home for major holidays, making brief appearances at family gatherings where conversation remained superficial. Dad would occasionally call with generic updates about the business, carefully avoiding any suggestion that things weren't going well. Samantha and I maintained a cold politeness, our once close relationship reduced to birthday texts and awkward small talk at Christmas dinner. I told myself I'd moved on, that my new life was better anyway. But the truth was that every manufacturing client I worked with in New York reminded me of what I'd lost. Every success I achieved came with a bittersweet edge. I was proving what I could have done with Reynolds Manufacturing had I been given the chance. When I first arrived in New York City, reality hit hard. My entry-level marketing coordinator position paid barely enough to afford a tiny studio apartment in Astoria, Queens, with a view of the neighboring building's brick wall. The glamorous Manhattan skyline I'd imagined was visible only during my cramped subway commute to work. Those first few months tested everything in me. I'd gone from being a respected manager in my family's business to fetching coffee and organizing spreadsheets. My new colleagues had impressive degrees from prestigious universities and connections throughout the industry. I had experience in a small-town manufacturing company that nobody in New York had heard of. But I had something they didn't: the burning determination to prove my worth without my family name behind me. If Dad thought I wasn't ready to lead, I would show him and everyone else just how capable I was. I arrived at the office an hour before everyone else, stayed late every night, and spent weekends studying marketing trends and strategies. "You work like someone's chasing you," remarked Jessica Lawrence, the firm's senior vice president, after finding me still at my desk at 9 on a Friday evening, 3 months into the job. "Just trying to learn as much as I can," I replied, trying not to show how exhausted I was. Jessica studied me for a moment. "You know, there's a difference between working hard and working smart. Come have a drink with me, and we'll talk about both." That impromptu meeting changed everything. Over martinis at a nearby bar, Jessica became the first person in New York I opened up to about my background. She listened intently to my story about the family business, occasionally nodding with understanding. "Manufacturing clients are actually our weakest sector," she said when I finished. "Most of our team comes from consumer goods or tech backgrounds. Your industry knowledge is more valuable than you realize." The following Monday, she moved me to her team and assigned me to work on Precision Industries, a struggling account no one wanted. Drawing on my manufacturing background, I completely revamped their marketing approach, focusing on the technical expertise that their engineering customers would respect rather than flashy advertising that missed the mark. 3 months later, Precision increased their annual contract by 40%. 6 months after that, they referred 2 other manufacturing clients to us. Jessica gave me increasing responsibility, and I thrived on the challenge. Within 2 years, I was promoted to account manager. By year 3, I became director of our newly formed industrial marketing division. Now, 5 years after leaving Oak Ridge, I'm the vice president of client strategy, managing a team of 15 and responsible for over $20 million in annual billing. My specialized knowledge of the manufacturing sector became my superpower. I understood the technical language, the buying cycles, the concerns of engineers and procurement teams. I could translate complex technical specifications into compelling marketing messages that actually resonated with industrial buyers. My apartment upgraded from that tiny Astoria studio to a 1-bedroom in Brooklyn with a small balcony and a sliver of Manhattan skyline view. It wasn't the sprawling Pennsylvania home I might have had, but it was mine, earned through my own merit. I built a tight circle of friends who became my New York family. Rachel, A graphic designer I met through work became my closest confidant. Taylor and Marcus, a couple in my building, included me in their Sunday dinner tradition. My team members respected me, and several became friends outside of work. Yet despite all outward appearances of success, that old wound never fully healed. I kept a small framed photo of Reynolds Manufacturing on my bookshelf, a reminder of where I came from and what I'd lost. Occasionally, I'd search online for news about the company or check their outdated website for any signs of how they were doing under Samantha's leadership. Jessica, now both my boss and mentor, noticed these moments of distraction. During my annual review last year, after delivering glowing feedback about my performance, she leaned back in her chair and fixed me with a knowing look. "You've built something impressive here, Mackenzie. The team respects you, clients love you, and your division's growth is outpacing every other department. But I still see it sometimes. That look in your eyes when manufacturing clients talk about family businesses or succession planning. You haven't let it go, have you?" I tried to deny it, but Jessica waved away my protestations. "Listen, I'm not saying it's affecting your work, but carrying around unresolved pain takes energy you could be using elsewhere. Whatever happened with your family's business, it might be worth finding some kind of closure." I nodded politely, but dismissed her advice. Closure wasn't an option when the wound was still open and operating without me back in Pennsylvania. Besides, I was doing fine. My team had just landed Arkwright Industries, a major manufacturing conglomerate, and I was on track for another promotion. The irony wasn't lost on me that while I was building a reputation as an expert in helping manufacturing businesses thrive, I had no idea how my own family's company was faring. Dad's updates had become increasingly vague over the years, and Samantha never discussed business during our brief interactions. So when Dad's name flashed on my phone screen at midnight on a Tuesday, 5 years after I'd left Oak Ridge behind, it wasn't just unusual. It was alarming. And I had no idea that call would force me to finally confront everything I'd been running from. It was nearly midnight on Tuesday, and I was still hunched over my laptop in my Brooklyn apartment, finalizing slides for a presentation to Arkwright Industries the following morning. My coffee had gone cold, but I barely noticed as I tweaked language on a crucial market analysis slide. The vibration of my phone against the glass coffee table startled me. When I saw Dad on the caller ID, my stomach dropped. He never called this late. "Dad, is everything okay?" I answered, immediately alert. "Mackenzie." His voice sounded strange, tight, and unfamiliar. "I'm sorry to call so late. What's wrong?" The clock on my wall read 11:47 p.m. In the background, I could hear what sounded like paper shuffling. "It's the business." He paused, and I heard him take a deep breath. "We're in trouble. Serious trouble. For 5 years, I'd imagined a call like this might come someday. In my pettier moments, I'd even fantasized about it, vindication that I should have been the one to take over. But hearing the genuine fear in my father's voice brought no satisfaction. "What happened?" I asked, closing my laptop and giving him my full attention. "Atlas Manufacturing is gone." The words came out in a rush. "They terminated their contract last week. $8 million, Mackenzie. 40% of our annual revenue, just gone." Atlas was our largest client when I left, a manufacturer of high-end industrial equipment who'd been with Reynolds for over 15 years. I'd personally managed their account before I left, building a strong relationship with Thomas Aldridge, their CEO. "What did Sam do?" I asked, the question escaping before I could soften it. Dad's silence confirmed my suspicion. After a moment, he continued, "There were problems, quality issues with the last 3 shipments. Deadlines missed. Communication breakdowns. Thomas tried to work with Sam, but..." He trailed off. "But what, Dad?" "She wasn't responsive. Blamed the floor managers, the supply chain issues, everything but herself. The final straw was when she missed a meeting with Thomas last month and sent no explanation until the next day. He called me directly afterward, out of respect for our history, but said they couldn't continue the relationship." I closed my eyes, trying to process this. How bad is it really? The whole picture. We've got maybe 3 months of operating capital left. The bank won't extend our line of credit further. 2 other smaller clients are rumbling about leaving. Morale is at rock bottom. His voice cracked slightly. I never thought I'd see Reynolds Manufacturing like this. Where's Sam in all this? I asked, though I suspected the answer. She's struggling. The pressure got to her. She's not handling it well. Translation: my sister was falling apart and couldn't fix the mess she created. The silence stretched between us as I processed what he wasn't saying. Finally, Dad spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. I need you to come home, Mackenzie. I need you to help fix this. 5 years of hurt and resentment bubbled to the surface. You need me now? After you gave the company to Sam? After you decided I wasn't the right person to lead? I know I have no right to ask, he said, his voice heavy with regret. But this isn't just about Sam or me. It's about 60 employees who depend on Reynolds for their livelihoods. It's about the legacy your mother helped build. Please, Mackenzie, just come assess the situation. Tell us what to do. Then you can go back to your life in New York if that's what you want. The mention of Mom's legacy struck home. Despite everything, I couldn't bear the thought of the company she helped build collapsing. I'll need to check with my job, I said, not yet committing. I have a major presentation tomorrow. Let me think about it and call you back. After hanging up, I sat in the dark of my apartment, emotions swirling. There was vindication, yes. I'd been right about Sam not being ready. But there was also genuine concern for the business and its employees, many of whom I'd known my entire life. And beneath it all, that persistent ache of rejection that had never fully healed. I called Jessica despite the late hour, knowing she would understand the magnitude of the situation. This is quite the development, she said after I explained everything. What are you thinking? Part of me wants to tell him to figure it out himself, I admitted. He made his choice 5 years ago. And the other part? I sighed. Wants to rush home and save the day. Prove I could have done it better all along. Both understandable, Jessica said. But neither is a great reason for making this decision. What about a third option? Go home, assess the situation objectively as the professional you are now, and make recommendations. No emotional rescuing, no vindictive abandonment. Just apply your expertise to a business problem. You think I can be that detached about my family's company? I think the Mackenzie Reynolds I know can do anything she sets her mind to, Jessica replied. And frankly, this might be the closure you need, one way or another. By morning, I'd made my decision. I called Jessica again at a more reasonable hour and asked for 2 weeks of emergency leave. Then I booked a flight to Pennsylvania for that afternoon, postponed my presentation, and briefed my team on projects they'd need to handle in my absence. Finally, I called my father back. I'll be there tonight, I said. But I'm not promising anything beyond an assessment of the situation, Dad. I need you to understand that. That's more than we deserve, he replied, relief evident in his voice. Thank you, Mackenzie. As I packed a suitcase, I tried to quiet the voice in my head asking if I was making a terrible mistake. I was returning not as the daughter desperate for approval, but as Mackenzie Reynolds, VP of Client Strategy, an expert in manufacturing marketing and business development. This was business, not family drama. At least, that's what I told myself as my plane took off for Pennsylvania, carrying me back to everything I'd tried to leave behind. The flight from LaGuardia to Harrisburg took less than 2 hours, but it felt like traveling back in time. As the small commuter plane descended over the familiar Pennsylvania landscape, my stomach tightened with anxiety. I'd rented a car at the airport, unwilling to depend on my father or sister for transportation during this visit. Driving the 40 minutes to Oak Ridge, I took the long route that passed by Reynolds Manufacturing. Even from the road, I could see signs of decline. The sign at the entrance needed repainting, the landscaping was overgrown, and the parking lot had noticeable potholes that hadn't been repaired. These small details spoke volumes. They were the first things to go when cash flow became tight. I pulled into a spot marked visitor, a painful reminder of my changed status. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my laptop bag and walked through the front doors into the reception area where I'd once belonged. Linda, the longtime receptionist who'd known me since childhood, gasped when she saw me. Mackenzie. Oh my goodness. She rushed around her desk to embrace me. Your father said you might be coming, but I hardly believed it. Before I could respond, Dad emerged from his office. At 65, he looked older than when I'd last seen him at Christmas, more gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face, as if he wasn't sure how I would greet him. Mackenzie, he said, approaching cautiously. Thank you for coming. I accepted his awkward hug, keeping my professional demeanor. Where's Sam? I'd like to get started right away. In her office, my old office, he added, and I caught the note of regret. She's expecting you. Walking through the production floor to reach the management offices, I noted more signs of trouble. Equipment that should have been running sat idle. Employees gave me surprised looks as I passed, a few nodding in recognition. The energy felt different. The pride and purpose I remembered had been replaced with tension and uncertainty. Samantha's door was closed. I knocked firmly, then entered without waiting for a response, a small assertion of authority I couldn't help making. My sister looked up from her desk, startled. At 35, Samantha had always been the conventionally beautiful one of us, tall and blonde like our mother, while I had Dad's more average height and brown hair. But now she looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and a tightness around her mouth I'd never seen before. Mackenzie, she said, standing up. You actually came? Dad said it was an emergency, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Let's not waste time. I need to see everything. Books, client communications, production reports, quality control logs, staffing, all of it. Samantha's jaw tightened. I know the business doesn't look great right now, but I don't appreciate you swooping in like some corporate savior. We're having a temporary setback. $8 million isn't temporary, Sam. It's existential. Now, are you going to work with me, or should I just go back to New York and let you figure this out yourself? She stared at me for a long moment before deflating slightly. Fine. What do you want to see first? The next 4 hours were a deep dive into just how bad things had gotten. The financials were worse than Dad had indicated. Not only was Atlas gone, but 3 other smaller clients had reduced their orders. Accounts payable were stretching beyond 60 days. The quality control systems I'd implemented years ago had been dismantled in what Samantha described as streamlining, but appeared to be simple cost-cutting without understanding the consequences. Most concerning were the employee reports. Turnover had increased dramatically. 3 senior machinists with decades of experience had left in the past year alone. The production manager position had been vacant for 3 months, with responsibilities distributed among already overworked staff. Why haven't you hired a new production manager? I asked, reviewing the organization chart. Samantha shifted uncomfortably. We've interviewed a few people, but haven't found the right fit. I've been handling most of those responsibilities myself. This explained a lot. Samantha had no production experience, and trying to run both the business and the shop floor was a recipe for disaster. By late afternoon, I'd requested private conversations with key staff members. Their insights painted a clearer picture. Communication breakdowns, shifting priorities, decisions made without consultation with the experts on staff. Multiple people mentioned Samantha's frequent absences and difficulty accepting feedback. Brian Porter, the operations manager who'd been with us for 15 years, was the most forthright. It's been tough watching this place change, he said when we spoke privately. Your dad built something special here. Everyone felt like part of a family. Now it feels like we're just trying to survive each day. What happened with Atlas? I asked. The full story, Brian. I need to know. He sighed. It started with quality issues about a year ago. We rushed a big order and sent parts that didn't meet spec. Sam assured Thomas Aldridge it was a one-time problem, but then it happened again 3 months later. The real breaking point came when she missed that meeting with Thomas last month. It wasn't just that she didn't show. She was unreachable for hours, and his team had flown in specifically to address concerns. By the time she called him the next day, he'd already decided to move on. The picture was becoming clearer, and it wasn't pretty. Samantha had been in over her head from the beginning, and rather than ask for help, she'd tried to cover up problems until they became unfixable. I need to talk to Thomas, I decided. Is he still at the same number? Brian nodded. He always respected you, Mackenzie. If anyone can get him to reconsider, it might be you. I called Thomas Aldridge that evening from my hotel room. To my surprise, he answered on the second ring. Mackenzie Reynolds, he said, his voice warming with recognition. It's been a long time. Too long, I agreed. I understand you've had some challenges with Reynolds Manufacturing recently. He chuckled without humor. That's one way to put it. I'm sorry to say your sister doesn't appear to have inherited your father's business sense, or yours. I'd like to hear your perspective on what happened, I said. I'm back in town temporarily to assess the situation. Thomas didn't hold back. The quality issues had cost Atlas significant money in their own production delays. The missed deadlines had forced them to scramble for alternative suppliers at premium prices. The final meeting, which Samantha had apparently missed because she was handling a personal matter she refused to elaborate on, was simply the last straw. We've built our reputation on reliability, Mackenzie. We can't partner with a supplier who doesn't share that value. I took no pleasure in ending our relationship with Reynolds. Your father built a great company, and you were always exceptional to work with. But things have changed. I took a deep breath. What would it take to get you to reconsider? There was a long pause. Are you back permanently? I'm here to assess and advise, I said carefully. My life is in New York now. Then I'll be frank. The only way Atlas would consider coming back is if there were significant changes in leadership and operations, with verifiable improvements in quality control and communication. We've already contracted with another supplier, but they can only handle 70% of what we need. If Reynolds could demonstrate real change, we might consider splitting the business, but it would be on a probationary basis with strict conditions. It wasn't a no. It was a slim chance, but it was something. I appreciate your candor, Thomas. Would you be open to meeting with me while I'm in town? For you, Mackenzie, yes. But I want to be clear, this would be exploratory only. No promises. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at the generic landscape painting on the wall. The situation was worse than I'd imagined, but not entirely hopeless. Atlas might be willing to give Reynolds another chance, with significant changes. The question was whether my father and sister would be willing to make those changes, and what my role should be in all of this. I'd come back to assess, not to fix. I had a successful career waiting for me in New York, a life I'd built from scratch. Did I really want to risk getting pulled back into the family business drama? And yet, seeing the factory today, the place where I'd grown up, where Mom and Dad had built something meaningful, stirred feelings I thought I'd moved past. Reynolds Manufacturing wasn't just a business. It was part of my identity, whether I wanted to admit it or not. Tomorrow would be the difficult part. Telling my father and sister just how bad things were, and what it would take to save the company they'd pushed me away from 5 years ago. Dad suggested we have dinner at his house to discuss my findings as a family. I knew this was a recipe for disaster, but couldn't see a way to refuse without making things worse. So at 7 o'clock, I found myself sitting at the same dining room table where, 5 years earlier, he had announced Samantha would take over the business. Dad had cooked his specialty, pot roast with roasted potatoes and carrots, as if a home-cooked meal could somehow soften the harsh realities we needed to discuss. Samantha arrived late, already defensive before a word was spoken. She'd clearly made an effort with her appearance, wearing a business-appropriate dress and jewelry, her hair and makeup carefully done, as if dressing the part of CEO could compensate for her performance in the role. I've spent the day reviewing everything, I began after an awkward exchange of pleasantries. I've also spoken with Thomas Aldridge at Atlas. Samantha's head snapped up. You contacted Thomas without telling me? I'm still the CEO, Mackenzie. You had no right. Atlas represents $8 million in business that you lost, I replied evenly. Recovering even a portion of that account is critical to Reynolds' survival. Thomas agreed to meet with me to discuss possibilities. What did he say? Dad asked, ignoring Samantha's glare. He might consider giving us a portion of their business back, but only with significant changes to leadership and operations. They've already contracted with another supplier for most of their needs, but that supplier can't handle everything. There's an opportunity there, but it won't be easy. What kind of changes? Dad pressed. I took a deep breath. Based on everything I've seen today, Reynolds needs a complete operational overhaul. Quality control systems need to be rebuilt from the ground up. We need a proper production manager immediately. The financial controls are inadequate. And most importantly, there needs to be a change in leadership. Samantha slammed her water glass down. So that's what this is about. You've been waiting for this opportunity, haven't you? Waiting for me to stumble, so you could swoop in and take over. That's not fair, Sam, Dad interjected. Mackenzie came back because I asked her to help. Help or replace me? Samantha shot back. Because it sounds like she's already decided I'm the problem. I struggled to maintain my professional demeanor. The numbers speak for themselves, Sam. Reynolds has lost 40% of its revenue. Quality issues have driven away your largest client. Staff morale is at rock bottom. 3 key machinists have left in the past year. These aren't matters of opinion, they're facts. You have no idea what I've been dealing with, Samantha said, her voice rising. The market has changed since you left. Supply chains are a nightmare. Labor costs have increased. You get to judge from your cushy New York office, but you haven't been here in the trenches. I'm not judging based on industry challenges that every manufacturer faces, I countered. I'm judging based on specific decisions and management practices that have driven this business to the brink of failure. Dad looked pained. Girls, please. This isn't helping. No, Dad. We need to have this conversation, I insisted. The company can't survive without immediate intervention. And Sam needs to acknowledge her role in this crisis. Samantha stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. My role? What about Dad's role in putting me in this position? Did you ever think, maybe, I never wanted this responsibility? That maybe I took over because he made me feel like I had to? I stared at her in disbelief. You took the company I had worked my entire life to prepare for, and now you're saying you didn't even want it? I wanted to matter. Samantha shouted, tears forming in her eyes. You were always the smart one, the responsible one, Dad's perfect little protege. After my divorce, I had nothing, no career, no husband, no purpose. When Dad suggested I take over, it felt like finally someone believed I could do something important. The room fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. I turned to my father, who couldn't meet my eyes. Is that true, Dad? You gave Sam the company because she needed a confidence boost after her divorce. He shifted uncomfortably. It wasn't that simple, Mackenzie. Then explain it to me, I demanded, feeling 5 years of hurt bubbling to the surface. Because from where I'm sitting, you handed over a multi-million-dollar company with 60 employees to someone with no experience or training because she was going through a rough patch. Meanwhile, I had spent my entire life preparing to take over. How is that a responsible business decision? Dad's shoulders slumped. Sam was in a bad place after Derek left. She was drinking too much, isolated, talking about moving across the country. I was worried about her. You've always been so capable, so independent. I thought you'd be fine no matter what. I thought Sam needed the business more than you did. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Dad hadn't chosen Samantha because he thought she'd be better for the business. He'd chosen her because he thought I would succeed regardless, while she might fall apart without this opportunity. He'd sacrificed the company's best interests and my dreams for Samantha's emotional well-being. So you risked everything Mom helped build, everything you spent 30 years creating, as some kind of therapy for Sam? My voice shook with emotion. Did you ever consider that putting her in a position she wasn't prepared for might actually make things worse for her? That it might destroy the business and her confidence? Samantha sank back into her chair, covering her face with her hands. You think I don't know I've failed? You think I don't see the disappointment in Dad's eyes every day? I've been drowning for 5 years, Mackenzie. Too proud to admit I needed help. Too scared to face that I was in over my head. For the first time, I noticed the slight tremor in her hands, the subtle signs I'd missed earlier. Are you still drinking, Sam? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Dad looked devastated. Samantha, you told me you had that under control. I have good days and bad days, she mumbled. Lately, there have been more bad than good. The pieces fell into place. Her missed meeting with Thomas, her erratic decision-making, her defensive responses to feedback. She wasn't just struggling with a business. She was struggling with addiction, using alcohol to cope with the pressure of a role she was never prepared for. I stood up, suddenly needing space. I can't do this right now. I came back to help assess the business situation, not to unpack 5 years of family dysfunction. Mackenzie, please, Dad began, but I cut him off. You asked me to come back and help fix a business problem, but this isn't just a business problem. This is about your choices, Dad. This is about putting your children in impossible positions because you couldn't make the tough decisions yourself. I grabbed my purse. I need some air. I'll talk to you both tomorrow. I drove aimlessly through Oak Ridge, the familiar streets both comforting and suffocating. Eventually, I found myself at Riverside Park, where Mom used to take us for picnics on summer evenings. I sat on a bench overlooking the water, trying to process everything I'd learned. My phone rang. Brian Porter, the operations manager. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. Mackenzie, sorry to bother you after hours, he said when I picked up. I just wanted to check in. How's it going with the family discussions? About as well as you'd expect, I replied wryly. The business issues are just the tip of the iceberg. Brian was quiet for a moment. Listen, a bunch of us are meeting at O'Malley's for a drink. Some of the old crew would love to see you. Might give you a different perspective on things. I almost declined, but realized I needed to hear from the people who had remained at Reynolds through all of this. I'll be there in 15 minutes. O'Malley's was the same dimly lit pub where we'd celebrated company milestones for as long as I could remember. I spotted Brian at a corner table with Michael Coleman, our longtime head of maintenance, and a few other familiar faces. Michael stood to give me a bear hug when I approached. At 58, he'd been with Reynolds since before I was born and had taught me how to troubleshoot machinery issues when I was still a teenager. Look what the wind blew in, he said warmly. The prodigal daughter returns. The next 2 hours provided invaluable perspective. These loyal employees shared stories of the company's decline, but also their continued belief in what Reynolds could be. They spoke of my father with respect despite his recent hands-off approach, and of Samantha with a mix of frustration and sympathy. She tries hard, Michael said. No one can say she doesn't care. But caring isn't enough when you don't have the knowledge or experience. And she's got other issues that get in the way of good decision-making. We all want Reynolds to survive, Brian added. Most of us have invested years of our lives here. But things can't continue as they are. As the night wound down, Michael walked me to my car. You know, your mother once told me something about you and your sister. She said Samantha feels everything so intensely it sometimes paralyzes her, while you feel just as deeply, but channel it into action. She was proud of both of you, for different reasons. I leaned against my rental car, suddenly exhausted. What would you do in my position, Michael? Go back to New York and my successful career there. Or stay and try to save a company that was taken away from me once already. Michael considered this thoughtfully. I can't answer that for you, Mackenzie. But I will say this. Reynolds Manufacturing isn't just your father's legacy or your sister's burden. It's part of who you are, too. Whether you stay or go, I think you need to make peace with that somehow. As I drove back to my hotel, his words echoed in my mind. Reynolds was part of who I was, regardless of what had happened 5 years ago or what I decided to do now. The question was whether I could find a way forward that honored that connection without sacrificing the new life I'd built for myself. Tomorrow, I would need to make a decision, not just about what Reynolds Manufacturing needed, but about what I needed as well. I arrived at the factory early the next morning, before most of the staff. I needed quiet time to organize my thoughts and finalize my approach. By 8 o'clock, I had reserved the conference room and asked Linda to schedule a meeting with the core management team at 9, followed by separate meetings with my father and Samantha. When Brian, Michael, and the other managers assembled, I was direct. Reynolds Manufacturing is at a critical juncture. The decisions made in the next few weeks will determine whether this company survives. I need your honest assessment of our strengths, weaknesses, and what you believe needs to change. For the next 2 hours, we had the most productive conversation the company had seen in years. These experienced professionals knew exactly what was wrong and had ideas for fixing it, ideas that had been ignored or dismissed under Samantha's leadership. I took copious notes, asked probing questions, and began to form a recovery strategy. Our quality control is the most urgent issue, said Diana Matthews, our quality supervisor. When we dismantled the system you implemented, Mackenzie, we lost the consistency that clients like Atlas depended on. We need to rebuild that immediately. The communication breakdowns are killing us, added Brian. Clients don't get timely updates, internal departments don't coordinate effectively, and there's no clear decision-making process. By the end of the meeting, we had identified 3 critical priorities: reinstating robust quality control, establishing clear communication protocols, and addressing the leadership vacuum. I asked each manager to draft specific action plans for their areas and scheduled a follow-up meeting for the next day. Next came the difficult conversation with Samantha. I found her in her office, looking like she hadn't slept well. We need to talk about your personal issues and how they're affecting the business, I said, closing the door behind me. She flinched, but didn't argue. You mean my drinking?
Yes.
And whatever else might be going on. Sam, you're my sister before anything else. I'm angry about what happened 5 years ago, but I also care about you. You're clearly struggling, and that's affecting your ability to lead. To my surprise, she didn't get defensive. Instead, her shoulders slumped in what looked like relief. I've been trying to prove I deserve this position for so long that I can't admit when I need help. It started with a glass of wine in the evening to take the edge off, then 2, then more. Derek noticed before we divorced. It was part of why he left. Have you tried getting help?
She shook her head.
How could I? Everyone in town knows me. The Reynolds name is on the building. I couldn't bear the shame of people knowing I was failing at this too. For the first time in years, I saw my sister instead of my rival, vulnerable, wounded, and trying desperately to appear strong. Sam, getting help isn't failing. It's being responsible. And right now, you need to be responsible not just for yourself, but for everyone who depends on this company. Our conversation was difficult, but necessary. By the end, Samantha had agreed to seek treatment for her alcohol dependency and to be honest about her limitations with the business. It wasn't an instant fix, but it was a start. My meeting with Dad was equally challenging. I found him in his small office, the one he'd moved to after giving Samantha the CEO suite. The managers and I have been working on a recovery plan, I told him. But before we go further, we need to address the leadership issue. Dad nodded wearily. I assume you're going to tell me Sam needs to step down. Yes, but I'm also going to tell you that you need to step up. You've been letting things fall apart rather than confronting the problems. That stops now. His eyes widened at my directness, but he didn't disagree. What do you propose? 2 options. 1. I take over as interim CEO for 3 months to implement the recovery plan and stabilize the business. 2. We hire an outside management consultant to do the same. Either way, Sam steps into a different role more suited to her abilities, and you become actively involved again as chairman to provide oversight and guidance. And after 3 months? That depends on the results and on what everyone wants at that point. This isn't about me taking back what I think should have been mine, Dad. It's about saving Reynolds Manufacturing. He was quiet for a long moment. You've built a good life in New York. I've followed your career from afar, you know. Those articles about you in Industry Today, the award you won last year. You've done exactly what I always knew you could do. Succeeded on your own terms. I'm not sure I have the right to ask you to give that up. You don't, I said bluntly. But you do have 60 employees who deserve leadership that puts the company's interests first. So does Mom's legacy. So do you. Dad looked older than his 65 years as he considered my words. I made a terrible mistake 5 years ago, he finally said. I hurt you deeply, and I put Sam in a position she wasn't ready for. I convinced myself I was doing what was best for both of you, but the truth is I took the easy way out. Sam was struggling, and giving her the company seemed like a solution. I didn't want to face her problems directly, or make the hard decision to put you in charge when I knew it would hurt her. It was the honest acknowledgement I'd been waiting 5 years to hear. We can't change what happened, I said, my voice softening. But we can decide what happens next. I think it needs to be you, Mackenzie. Will you consider it? 3 months as interim CEO. I had anticipated this question and had spent half the night weighing my options. I'll do it, but with conditions. I need complete authority to implement changes. Sam needs to commit to getting help for her drinking and finding a role where she can contribute positively. And I need your support as chairman. Real support, not just a title. You have it, he said without hesitation. All of it. By that afternoon, we had assembled the management team again, this time with Dad and Samantha present. I presented the transition plan, and, to her credit, Samantha endorsed it. I've been pretending I could handle this on my own, and it hasn't worked, she told the team. Mackenzie has the skills and experience Reynolds needs right now. I'll be taking some time to address personal issues, and then finding where I can best contribute going forward. The relief in the room was palpable. For the first time in years, there was a sense of hope and direction. The next 2 weeks were intense. I worked around the clock, coordinating with Jessica in New York to extend my leave while maintaining oversight of my most critical clients there. We implemented new quality control protocols immediately, bringing back the system I had designed years earlier, but with updates based on current best practices. I conducted one-on-one meetings with every employee, listening to their concerns and ideas. The meeting with Thomas Aldridge was the pivotal moment. I presented our comprehensive recovery plan, complete with new quality assurance measures, communication protocols, and the leadership transition. I'm impressed with the thoroughness of this plan, Thomas said after my presentation. But what happens after your 3-month interim period? Reynolds needs stability to be a reliable partner. It was the question I had been avoiding myself. I'm committed to ensuring Reynolds has strong leadership going forward, whether that's me or someone else. We're establishing systems and processes that won't depend on any single individual. Thomas studied me for a moment. I've always respected your capabilities, Mackenzie. Atlas is willing to give Reynolds another chance, on a probationary basis. We'll start with 25% of our previous volume and evaluate after 90 days. It wasn't the full $8 million, but it was a start, $2 million in business that could help bridge the gap while we rebuilt. More importantly, it was a vote of confidence that we could leverage with other clients and the bank. As we implemented the recovery plan, something unexpected happened. I found myself reconnecting with the passion I'd always had for Reynolds Manufacturing. The challenges energized rather than depleted me. The opportunity to work with longtime employees who remembered me from childhood brought a sense of belonging I hadn't experienced in New York despite my success there. Samantha, meanwhile, entered an outpatient treatment program and began therapy. When she returned to work after 3 weeks, it was in a newly created role as Community Relations Director, a position that utilized her interpersonal skills and creativity without the pressure of operational decision-making. For the first time in years, I saw glimpses of the sister I'd grown up with, not the defensive rival she'd become. Dad stepped fully into his role as chairman, providing guidance without micromanaging. Our relationship began a slow healing process as we worked together with a new understanding and respect. By the end of the 2nd month, Reynolds Manufacturing had stabilized. We hadn't fully recovered, but the bleeding had stopped. Atlas was satisfied with our performance on their partial contract. 2 other clients had increased their orders based on our improved quality, and employee morale was rebounding. The question looming over everything was what would happen when my 3-month interim period ended. Jessica had been supportive, but made it clear my position in New York couldn't remain open indefinitely. I had built a successful career there, with a team that depended on me and clients who valued my expertise. Yet Reynolds needed consistent leadership to fully recover and grow. The business was part of my DNA in a way my New York career, despite its success, had never been. The question wasn't just about professional opportunities, but about where I truly belonged. The solution came from an unexpected source. During a video call to update Jessica on my situation, she proposed something I hadn't considered. "What about a bi-coastal arrangement?" she suggested. "Our manufacturing clients would benefit enormously from having direct access to a working manufacturing facility. What if Reynolds became a strategic partner with our firm? You could split your time between New York and Pennsylvania, bringing your expertise to both organizations." It was innovative, challenging, and potentially perfect. "You think the firm would go for that?" Jessica smiled. "Mackenzie, you've increased manufacturing client revenue by 70% in 2 years. We'd be fools to lose you. And gaining a strategic manufacturing partner would give us capabilities none of our competitors have." The idea took root and blossomed. Over the next 2 weeks, I developed a detailed proposal for a partnership between Reynolds Manufacturing and my New York firm. Reynolds would serve as a demonstration facility and testing ground for marketing strategies, while gaining access to high-level marketing expertise and potential new clients. I would divide my time between both locations, serving as CEO of Reynolds and maintaining a modified role with the New York firm. When I presented the concept to Dad and the management team, their enthusiasm was unanimous. The arrangement would provide Reynolds with new growth opportunities while allowing me to maintain the career I'd built in New York. It wasn't an either/or choice after all, but a both/and solution that leveraged everything I'd learned and accomplished over the past 5 years. 3 months after that midnight phone call from my father, Reynolds Manufacturing had undergone remarkable transformation. The factory floor hummed with renewed activity. Quality control metrics were back to their historical excellence. Communication flowed smoothly between departments and with clients. Most importantly, the company was profitable again, with a clear path forward. Alice Manufacturing had been so impressed with our turnaround that they increased their order volume from 25 to 40% of their previous level, with discussions underway about further expansion. Thomas Aldridge had become one of our biggest advocates, referring 2 new clients that added another $1 million in annual revenue. Samantha had embraced her role in community relations with unexpected enthusiasm. Freed from the pressure of operational leadership, she flourished in building relationships with local organizations and developing a corporate social responsibility program that enhanced Reynolds' standing in the community. Her treatment program was working, 3 months sober, and committed to continuing her recovery. "I never wanted to admit it, but I hated being CEO," she confessed during one of our now regular sister lunches. "Every day felt like I was wearing someone else's clothes, trying to be someone I wasn't. This new role feels right, like I'm finally contributing in a way that uses my actual strengths." Dad had stepped fully into his role as chairman, providing guidance and support without micromanaging. He'd also begun the process of proper succession planning, working with legal and financial advisors to establish clear protocols for the future. One evening, as we reviewed the quarterly projections in his home office, he paused and looked at me with uncharacteristic emotion. "I need to say something I should have said years ago," he began. "I'm sorry, Mackenzie. I made a terrible mistake when I gave the company to Sam instead of you. I convinced myself I was doing what was best for both of you, but the truth is I took the easy way out. I couldn't bear to see Samantha struggling after her divorce, and giving her the company seemed like a solution. I didn't want to face her problems directly. Why didn't you just talk to me about it?" I asked. "We could have found another way to help Sam." Dad sighed heavily.
Pride. Fear.
"I've never been good at difficult conversations. Your mother handled those. After she died, I just fumbled through the hard stuff. It was easier to make a unilateral decision than to have the painful conversations we needed to have as a family." It wasn't a perfect explanation, but it was honest. And for the first time, I truly understood that Dad's decision hadn't been a rejection of me, but a flawed attempt to help my sister during a crisis. For what it's worth, he continued, watching you these past 3 months has been like seeing the Reynolds manufacturing I always dreamed of building. You have a vision and leadership ability that neither Sam nor I ever had. Your mother would be so proud of what you've accomplished. The partnership with my New York firm had been formalized, with enthusiastic support from their leadership team. We were already seeing benefits on both sides, Reynolds gaining marketing expertise and new client introductions, while the firm leveraged our manufacturing capabilities to enhance their service offerings. My new bicoastal life presented challenges, of course. Maintaining apartments in both locations and traveling regularly between them required careful scheduling and, occasionally, exhausting travel days. But the rewards far outweighed the inconveniences. I was able to continue the career I'd built in New York while reclaiming my connection to the family business I'd always loved. In an unexpected development, Rachel, my best friend from New York, had recently accepted a position with a client in Philadelphia, just an hour from Oak Ridge. Having her nearby during my Pennsylvania weeks made the transition easier and helped bridge my two worlds. On my last evening before returning to New York for 2 weeks, I took a walk through the Reynolds manufacturing facility after most employees had left for the day. The quiet hum of essential equipment, the familiar smells of metal and machinery, the sense of solidity and purpose, it all felt right in a way I hadn't allowed myself to acknowledge for 5 years. Michael Coleman found me standing in the quality control lab, looking at the monitoring systems we'd reinstated. "Heading back to the big city tomorrow?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. I nodded. "Just for 2 weeks, then back here. The new normal." "Suits you," he observed. "You always did have bigger dreams than this town could hold. But you also always understood what makes this place special." I spent 5 years trying to convince myself I didn't need Reynolds manufacturing in my life, I admitted. Building something new in New York was my way of proving I could succeed without what was taken from me. But the truth is, this place was never just a job or a company to me. It's part of who I am. Michael smiled. "Your mother used to say something similar. She told me once that some people work to live, but others find the work that makes them feel most alive. She knew you were in the second category from the time you were small." As I prepared to leave the next morning, Dad and Samantha came to see me off. There was an ease between us that hadn't existed in years, perhaps had never existed in our adult lives. We had found our proper places in relation to each other and the family business, roles that honored our individual strengths rather than forcing us into positions that didn't fit. "I never thought I'd say this," Samantha said as she hugged me goodbye, "but I'm actually looking forward to the board meeting next month. We make a good team when we're not trying to be the same person." Dad embraced me last. "Safe travels, Mackenzie. The company will be here when you get back. Stronger than ever because of you." As I drove to the airport, I reflected on the unexpected journey of the past 3 months. What had begun as a crisis call in the middle of the night had led to a profound transformation, not just for Reynolds Manufacturing, but for my family and for me personally. I had learned that sometimes our deepest wounds can lead to our greatest growth. That family businesses are complex emotional ecosystems as much as they are economic entities. That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting the past, but finding a way forward that honors both the pain and the possibility. Most importantly, I'd learned that success isn't always an either/or proposition. Sometimes the path forward involves embracing seemingly contradictory truths, that I could be both the New York executive I'd become and the manufacturing leader I'd always been meant to be. That I could honor my father's legacy while creating my own. That I could work alongside my sister without either of us having to diminish ourselves to make room for the other. Reynolds Manufacturing would continue to evolve, as would my role in it. The bicoastal arrangement might not be permanent, but it was the right solution for now, allowing everyone to heal and grow while securing the company's future. What about you? Have you ever had to navigate complex family business dynamics or find your way back to something you thought you'd lost forever? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, Please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. And if you know someone struggling with family business challenges, share this video. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these complicated situations is the first step toward finding our own path forward. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes our greatest disappointments can lead us to exactly where we're meant to be.